Hello students, today we will be learning about kingdom Animalia. We have learned that Robert Whittaker has divided whole living organism into 5 kingdoms. One of those kingdoms is kingdom Animalia. Now, how are you going to recognize the organism which belongs to the kingdom Animalia? Organisms which are multicellular, that means made up of many cells, and who lacks chlorophyll, hence they cannot prepare their own food, and such animals are called heterotrophs. Whereas they also lack the cell walls, which is a feature of organism which belongs to the kingdom Animalia. Your kingdom Animalia is further classified into two groups, that is invertebrates and vertebrates. Invertebrates are those organisms which do not have the backbone, whereas vertebrates are organisms which have the backbone. Where your vertebrates and invertebrates are further divided into a smaller groups called as phyla, whereas phylum is singular. The phyla are graded in order of increasing complexity of organization, that is, from simple sponges to complex animals like human. So today in this video we will be learning about invertebrates. Invertebrates are further divided into phyla. Now there are 8 phylums which we'll be learning in detail about each one. So we have Porifera, Cnidarians, Platyhelminthes, nematodes, annelids, arthropods, musculus, echinoderms. Now very simple things to learn about them is Porifera. The pori word itself tells you pores. So all the sponges comes under Porifera. Phylum Porifera. Cnidarians are also called as coelenterate. Coelentrates are basically resembling the body cavity. Platyhelminthes, whereas nematodes and annelids could be remembered together. When you think about Platyhelminthes, remember platy, that is flat. Flatworms, all the flatworms comes under Platyhelminthes. Nematodes are also, you are also called as Ascalhelminthes, which are all the round worms, that is your Ascariasis. Pinworms comes under nematodes. Annelids are the phylums which consist of the segmented worms, that is your earthworm. So if you want to remember very easily, the easy way to remember this is you remember this 3 phylums together with the way of that your Platyhelminthes contains flatworm, flatty, flat. Nematodes, roundworm. Annelids, segmented worms. So these are your worm phylums. Now let's come to the next 6th one. The organism which have the jointed legs or appendages, they comes under the phylum arthropods. Your cockroach comes under arthropods. Then comes your next phylum, that is molluscus. Molluscus are the organism belonging to the phylum molluscus, mostly are soft body, like your jellyfish. Then comes your echinoderms. Echinoderms, the word itself, it's telling you echino, that means spiny structure, spines on their body. The organisms coming under the phylum Echinodermata will be having a spines on their body, whereas derms means what? Skin. So you divide this word echino, spiny, derms, skin. So now we'll be learning further about each of the phylum in detail. We'll be starting with the first phylum, that is phylum Porifera. If you observe very carefully, you'll notice that these organisms, that is, we are taking the example of sponge. Here they have on their body they have a tiny pores on the surface of their body, and you will observe that they have a large opening called as osculums on the top. So basically what happens is water goes in through these pores and comes out through the osculum. That means they take in the water, but the exit of water take place through the osculum. Sponges are basically an aquatic animals and mostly found in the seawater. They do not move and are attached to the sides or the bottom of the ocean. One more thing about the sponges is that they have a hollow cavity called as spongocele inside, which is going to take in the water. Now if you observe this opening, these are nothing but the pores which are present in the sponges which are going to take the water. Our next phylum is Nindaria, also called, it was earlier called Ceolentrata. So whereas if I explain you about the Nindaria, nido itself means stink, something is going to stink you. Now if you observe this picture here, it's the example shown as of organism called Hydra. Hydras are basically an aquatic animals which are mostly found in the oceans. If you observe, they have a hollow cavity called as coelenterons. Now, in the previous one, we have observed that the porifera, the organism belonging to the porifera, have small pores, whereas Hydra do not have pores. Hence, they do not go in the phylum porifera. Whereas they have a hollow cavities called as coelenterons. The water and as well as they have only one opening, that is what we call as mouth. So water basically comes in and goes out through only one opening, that is the mouth. Whereas on their the mouth itself is being surrounded by a number of finger-like projections, if you observe, called as what? Tentacles. The tentacles itself carries a nidoblast, the cells called as nidoblast. Now the cells are basically called as stinking cells. Now what are the functions of this stinking cells? Basically they help them in the defense as well as in catching the food. Now apart from Hydra, there are other examples too. Example jellyfish, corals and sea anemones. And we have different species of sea anemones too. Our next phylum is phylum Platyhelminthes. That is, all the flatworms belongs to the phylum Platyhelminthes. The flatty word itself, Platy, flatty itself is telling you it's flat. Helminthes means worms. Now here, if you notice, shown as the example of a tapeworm. Basically, animals belonging to the Platyhelminthes have a thin, flat and unsegmented body, which could be like a leaf-like or a ribbon-like. And very interesting thing about the organism which belongs to the phylum Platyhelminthes is that they have an incomplete digestive tract. That means they do not have an anus. They do have a mouth, but they don't have the anus. Hence, we say they have an incomplete digestive tract. So the question over here is, then how do they excrete? So they do take the food in through the mouth, but the excretion happens through the flame cells. Now what are flame cells? Which basically inside the body itself they have a cell called as flame cells which helps in the process of excretions. As well as they do not have any organs for locomotions. Flatworms are mostly parasites in humans. Mostly they are going to be endoparasite. We know that parasites can be endoparasite as well as ectoparasite. But Platyhelminthes are endoparasite. That means they are found inside the body of the humans and also other animals. They may be, some may be free living animals too. So basically the tapeworm which is being shown over here is a parasite in humans. There is one more example of Platyhelminthes, that is liver fluke, which is a parasite in the liver of sheep. Our next phylum is phylum Nematode. Nematodes are also called as Aschelhelminthes, which includes all the roundworms. And it's very easy to distinguish between Platyhelminthes, nematodes because of the structures. Now if you observe these pictures, these are roundworms. Example shown over here is an Ascarisis. Ascarisis are basically unisexual organisms where we have both, that is male Ascarisis as well as the female Ascarisis. And how are you going to distinguish between both? The smaller one is going to be the male Ascarisis, whereas the bigger one is going to, the taller you say, is going to be the female Ascarisis. Now these animals have a round, that's why we say roundworms, unsegmented, very important, they are unsegmented, they don't have segments on their bodies and tube-like bodies. Now here, as well as we studied in the Platyhelminthes, they have an incomplete digestive tract, but nematodes have a complete digestive tract. That means they have both, that is mouth as well as the anus. They have mouth as well as the anus. They do not have any organs for locomotion similar to the Platyhelminthes. And here also they are parasitic. That means mostly they are endoparasite found in the host organisms. It could be human, it can be animals. A very famous and very familiar one is the ascariasis, which has been found in the small intestine of the human. Whereas that is our roundworm. Ascariasis is a parasite in the human intestine of human, whereas pinworm and filarial worms are also parasite in humans. Pinworms are basically the worms which children experience mostly in their anus place, and filarial worms are those which are also an endoparasites, comes under the phylum nematodes. Next phylum is phylum Annelida, which include all the segmented worms. When I say Annelida, the word it's been divided as annulus, that is ring, and eodo means worm. That means you will see all the segmented worms coming under the phylum Annelida. If you observe here, a very best picture given of earthworm, where you see a segment bodies. You see segments on the body of the earthworm. Animals which comes under the phylum Annelida have a segmented, long and worm-like body. They have a true body cavity. That means as well as they have the complete digestive organs, that is mouth as well as the anus. Now what we learned in the phylum Platyhelminthes and nematodes, that they both were not having any structure for the locomotion, but in the Annelida you will observe that the organism have a fine bristle like structures, small bristle like structures, which are like helping them for the locomotion. As well as here they that what we learned in the, which is going to be distinguishing the Annelida from Platyhelminthes and nematode, is that this organism have a special excretory organs. They have organs. This is very important because previously we have seen that organisms were not having the excretory organ. So your organism have a special excretory organ called as nephridia, which is going to help to excrete. So apart from earthworm, we have one more example called leech. We'll move on to the next phylum, that is phylum Arthropoda. Arthropoda word itself suggests arthros means joint, whereas podas means foot. So animals with jointed legs are going to come under the phylum Arthropodas. These animals you'll find already have the jointed leg. What do I mean by jointed leg? That means they have an appendage. Appendage means what? The legs are being attached or joined through their body, like with their body. So you will distinguish these organisms as they are going to be having the three parts in their body, that is head, thorax and abdomen. The body itself is covered by an joint exoskeleton. If you observe crabs, if you observe flies, if you observe cockroach, they all are going to be having an exoskeleton which is made up of chitin, material called chitin, which consists of cellulose. Whereas a large group of animals while are found everywhere on the earth, in air, water and all land. That means they are adapted to live in whole biosphere. So you are already the example of fly, crabs and centipedes are given. Cockroaches etc. are other examples. Our next phylum is phylum Mollusca. This phylum consists of all the organisms having a soft body. As well as, very important, they are unsegmented. Soft body is generally covered by a hard shell. Shell may be in one piece, example snail, or two piece, example oysters. Some animals like octopus have a shell inside their body. The body is generally divided into three parts. How we had in the Arthropoda, similarly here, that the mollusca as the organisms have a three parts. The body is being divided into three parts, that is head, visceral mass. What do I mean by visceral mass? That's the soft body which they have, and the foot. Whereas the locomotion in this organisms are done by the muscular foot. So examples who belongs to the phylum Mollusca are oyster, snail, octopus, squids. Octopus has 8 long arms with the suckers. If you notice over here in the picture, they have they have head and they have legs. Okay, that is their arms with the suckers. Here, if you notice in the snail also have a 3 parts. That was their head, then their visceral mass, this one, the soft body, as well as their foot. And they have some of them organisms have a hard shell too, like oysters and snail. We'll go to the next phylum, that is phylum Echinodermata. In the earlier only I said you echino means spines, whereas dermata means what? Covering or skin. So animals are called spiny skin as their body is covered with plates and spines. They have unsegmented, radially symmetrical body. Very important, radially symmetrical bodies. What are the radially symmetrical? That means no matter you cut by any planes of this organism, you're going to be getting a equal half. Body could be spherical, cylindrical or star shaped. Locomotion, very important feature of this organism is that locomotion is done by the 2 feet. How do you specify this organism? Mostly it's a very important criteria to specify this organism is by their 2 feet, which helps to capture the food. These are exclusively marine animals. So we have completed with our non-vertebrates all the 8 phylums. It's time to test yourself how much you have understood. So here are a few questions. Let me know in the comment box your answers. Thank you.